Are you all ready to join me on a journey trillions of kilometers to the far side of the universe to look for aliens?
Yes.
No, I said, are you ready to look for aliens?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because I think one of the oldest, age-old questions that humans have asked for years and years and years is this question, are we alone in the universe? Now, before I try to give you my answer to this question, I would like to find out what you guys think. So let me do a bit of a survey and see what your thoughts are. The first question is, aside from life on Earth, do you think life exists anywhere in the universe? Now, you have to vote for one or the other. The way you're going to vote is raise your hand and yell out either no or yes, depending on what you think. So do you think there is life exists anywhere else in the universe? No? No? Raise your hand for no, and raise your hand for yes. Yes. Wow, a lot of people believe in aliens. Okay, how about this next question? Do you believe aliens have ever visited us on planet Earth? Raise your hand for no.
No.
And yell out yes if you think they have.
Yes.
Okay, we got about a 50-50 ratio there. Well, let me tell you what I think about that, because there's all kinds of thousands of stories out there about people that have seen aliens and seen UFOs, and maybe even some of them got sucked up into a spaceship and got operated on and all that kind of stuff. And Carl Sagan, a famous astrophysicist, once said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And we really don't have evidence that suggests any of these reports are true. In fact, think about what UFO stands for. What's the U stand for? Unidentified. So how can you go from a UFO unidentified to, oh, that must be an alien from trillions of kilometers away that's visiting us on Earth? You can't make that leap. Or those people that says they've been sucked up into the spaceship and got operated on. Listen, I have a tip for you. If you ever get sucked up into an alien spaceship, okay, I have a tip for you. After they finish operating on you, point to the window and say to the alien, look, and distract them. And while they're looking out the window, just grab something like a coffee mug or a pen or something and slip it in your pocket. Because when you come back to planet Earth, I want to see whatever it was that you grabbed on that alien spaceship, right? Because if it was from trillions of kilometers away, I imagine it's going to be something quite interesting for us to analyze. So I wanted to take you back 70 years because there was a famous astrophysicist by the name of Enrique Fermi who asked the question, hey, if the universe is so huge and there might be trillions and trillions of worlds with life on them, where are all the aliens? Why haven't they visited us? Why don't we actually have proof that these intelligent aliens actually exist? And this question that he posed came to be known as the Fermi paradox. So I want to talk about the Fermi paradox and give you my solution to the Fermi paradox to see what you think of that. And so here it is. My solution to the Fermi paradox is that microbial life and intelligent civilizations are incredibly common throughout the universe, but so far apart in space and time that we'll likely never, ever, ever get to meet them. So let me tell you why I believe that this is the right solution to the Fermi paradox. The first thing is that the universe is huge, okay? And so if we look at this Sloan Digital Sky Survey, this is an actual sky survey looking at galaxies throughout the universe, and NASA was able to measure not only the size of these galaxies, but their location and distance from Earth, and then they created this visual 3D flyby of all of these galaxies. Now, each of these smudges is a galaxy with about 100 billion stars, okay? And if it's got 100 billion stars, it could have like anywhere from 100 billion to 1 trillion planets and moons, each with the possibility of hosting life, okay? And so there's 1 trillion, there's another trillion, there's another trillion. So when I think of that huge size and scope, I can't imagine that for some reason we would be the only place that hosts life anywhere in the universe. Next is our universe started with the Big Bang and created our universe. But guess what? Some scientists suggest that, well, if the Big Bang created our universe, why wasn't thousands of other Big Bangs creating thousands of other universes? So maybe we live in a multiverse with an infinite number of universes which makes the universe pretty big. So if the universe is infinite in size, the answer might be that there's an infinite number of worlds with life on it. So think about that. We're going to break down our search for life in the universe into two segments. One is looking at microbial life, tiny little bacteria, and something called extremophiles, and later we'll talk about intelligent life. But as far as microbial life, what we found on Earth, because this is the only evidence we find of how extreme the conditions can be before life will form, we find that life can start almost everywhere, especially anywhere there's water. So life can exist on land, in rocks deep underground, and deep in caves where there's not even any light, underground, deep in the ice of Antarctica, in the deepest parts of the ocean, and even 60 kilometers up in the sky where we've actually been able to find life. So microbial life and these things called extremophiles can really find a foothold to form in many different areas. In fact, if you look at 1 average gram of soil, contains 1 trillion different cells and 10,000 species of bacteria. So if that's what we discover on Earth, why wouldn't we expect something like that on another world that also has soil and water and things like that that might be mixing together? And then there's these things called hydrothermal vents, which are really cool. This is just basically volcanic activity at the very bottom of the ocean where no light exists, and yet somehow it's teeming with life. Hundreds of degrees in temperature, thousands of pounds per square inch of pressure, and yet somehow it's teeming with all kinds of life. Shrimp and clams and even tube worms that are like 2 meters in length. So all kinds of life forming in the most extreme parts of our planet Earth. In fact, it's believed that these life forms may be some of the earliest forms of life on planet Earth that might have formed over 4 billion years ago. Now let's look at life in our solar system, because that's the obvious first place to take a look. So if we take a look at life in our solar system, the first thing we should do is search for life in something called the habitable zone. The habitable zone is the spot at a distance from its sun, in our case the sun, where it's not too hot and not too cold, and theoretically have some flowing water on the surface so that life can form. And so in our solar system, the only 2 planets in that zone are Earth and Mars. We know we have life, but we don't know if Mars has life or ever did have life. And it's interesting because with many successful missions to Mars, rovers climbing around Mars and taking a look at it, it's believed that 3 to 4 billion years ago, Mars did have surface water. And we see evidence of rivers and river deltas and lakes and oceans. But now, all of that got wiped out because in its early days, Mars lost its magnetic field, and the sun's radiation just basically wiped out 99% of its atmosphere. So now it's basically one big desert. Right? But we found some tantalizing evidence that maybe there is still life somewhere on Mars. So the first thing we found was frozen water, for example, at its poles. Recently, we even found evidence that there is liquid water under the surface of Mars. Also recently discovered was methane, released during the springtime and then disappearing again in the winter. Now, there's only 2 things that can produce methane. One is geological processes like volcanoes and stuff like that. But another one is processes from life, okay? So maybe life is creating this methane to form. And also just recently, the Curiosity rover discovered wild fluctuations in the oxygen level on planet Mars. So once again, where's this oxygen coming from? We don't know yet. We haven't discovered the source of it. So between the underground water and the methane and the oxygen, we want to keep having Mars missions to see if we can one day find that probably only microbial life on Mars. So that covers our habitable zone, but guess what? We also have tantalizing evidence that there may be life in very cold parts of our solar system, like Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus, even though these are 1 billion to 1.5 billion kilometers away from the sun, so they don't get much heat from the sun at all. They look to be very frozen wastelands, but until we took a closer look. And when did that happen? So let's take a closer look at Saturn's moon, Enceladus. There was a mission that NASA was able to take that actually had this probe, the Cassini spacecraft, that actually has been flying around Saturn for over 20 years. They spotted these plumes shooting out from Enceladus, and it actually flew right through those plumes and found evidence of hydrogen and water vapor, and even not microbial life, but organic materials that might be the precursors to life. So haven't found life yet, but some tantalizing evidence. So what do the scientists think might be the case? Is that they believe that even though this is Enceladus is this frozen wasteland of ice, that buried deep underneath that frozen ice is huge oceans that might even be greater in size, bigger in size than all of the oceans on planet Earth. And these are formed from hydrothermal vents. There's hydrothermal vents, we believe, that's causing this vapor to shoot out from the moon itself. So once again, if we have life on our hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean, maybe there's some of that stuff floating around at the bottom of these oceans. Okay, what about life on exoplanets? Because we're probably not going to find intelligent life in our solar system, so we have to look further than that. We're now going to have to look trillions of kilometers away. And there's interesting spacecraft that NASA has put out there. Most recent one is called TESS. Its predecessor was called Kepler. It's actually a spaceship that just has one mission in life, and that's to search for exoplanets in the universe. And guess what? This particular spacecraft, the original one called Kepler, has literally found thousands of exoplanets orbiting around stars in the universe. Rocky planets, lava worlds, ocean worlds, ice giants. And so now we know that, boy, in fact, NASA's saying there's probably at least one planet for every star out there, and maybe many times more than that, which means there's potentially hundreds of billions of exoplanets just in our Milky Way alone. Now, if you take a look at this, we start to say, well, if there's hundreds of billions of exoplanets, once again, why haven't they ever hopped on a spaceship and come to visit us? Okay? So now we have to explore the reasons why maybe that's not the case. The first thing is that the universe is so big that the aliens might just never reach us. So to hit that point home, I'll give you an example of our closest neighborhood star called Proxima Centauri, which you might have heard is only 4 light years away. But guess what? 4 light years is 41 trillion kilometers. If you were to fly there on our fastest spacecraft, which can travel at 700,000 kilometers an hour, 260 times faster than a speeding bullet, it would still take you 15,000 years to get to this star. And forget about trying to go there in a Boeing 747, because that would take you over 10 million years. That's what space is. It's mostly empty space. So now imagine if an intelligent species of life lives like 1,000 light years away from us. Well, that would be billions of years to reach us, or millions of years to reach us, unless they figured out warp drive like in Star Trek or something. But these distances are so huge, it's going to be difficult for these intelligent species to get their act together and meet each other. The second point is that our existence is just a blink of an eye. So what do I mean by that? Our universe is 13.8 billion years old, but humans have only been around for a couple of 100,000 years. Now that sounds like a long time, but let me try to put it in perspective for you. If we were to condense the whole history of the universe, 13.8 billion years, into one human Earth calendar year, guess what? At midnight on January the 1st, the Big Bang happens and the universe forms. But guess what? Our solar system and Earth didn't show up until the middle of August. Microbial life showed up by the end of August, so fairly quickly after Earth was formed, microbial life came along. Multi-cell life didn't show up till November, and the animals and dinosaurs didn't show up until the end of December. And guess what? Humans didn't show up until the last day of the year, when in the last few hours of the year, our ancestors, starting at about 9:30 at night, showed up. And guess what? Humans didn't arrive on the scene until 8 minutes to midnight. So, you know, aliens might have visited us, but the chances of us being there at the same time that they happen to have made that visit might not be likely. In fact, I thought I should throw statistics together just to give us an idea. So I put this chart together that says, if aliens visited our neighborhood every 100 million years since the Big Bang, so they visited us 138 times, what would they have found? Well, 60% of the time, they wouldn't have found anything. The Earth wasn't born yet. 32% of the time, they would have found single-cell or multi-cell microbes. And only 2% of the time would they have found animals or dinosaurs, which ruled the Earth for a couple of 100 million years. But guess what? There's only a 4/100ths of 1% chance that they would have found humans and been able to say hi to us. So in this particular case, in these 138 visits, there's a rounding error, so a 0% chance that they would have arrived at the same time that we were here. Okay, so I wanted to wrap up with my top 3 predictions about life in the universe, and these might all happen in your lifetime, so get ready. You can say you saw it here first. The first one is that this headline here, wow, fossils of Martians found on Mars. So maybe one day we'll actually find some fossils, the way we dig up fossils on planet Earth, that actually proves that some type of life forms actually lived on Mars. So get ready, hopefully in the next decade you might see this kind of evidence appearing. Now this next headline is one that I was inspired by something called the James Webb Telescope, which is kind of like the follow-on from the Hubble telescope. It's even more powerful. It can even detect what's in atmospheres of exoplanets trillions of kilometers away. So maybe we'll see one of these headlines one day, alien life found on an exoplanet trillions of kilometers away, probably. Now the reason I had to add the probably there is because it's a very powerful telescope, but it's not going to see aliens kind of like waving to us and saying hi and stuff like that. But what it might find is evidence of biomarkers in the atmosphere like oxygen, methane, carbon dioxide, ozone, and maybe, so these are biosignatures, and maybe even technosignatures like CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, which are like in case of Earth, a man-made thing. And if we saw evidence of something like that on a distant planet, well, that requires some type of intelligence to produce something like that. So we might actually have evidence of alien life, even though we can't get a really nice picture of seeing them. And then the third prediction is Eureka, life found on Jupiter's moon Europa. So maybe we will actually be able to send a probe, and there's many planned in the next 10 to 20 years, to go to places like Europa and Enceladus and other places like that, where if we get really lucky, we might actually find microbial life, which would really answer the question, are we alone or not? Even though it's not intelligent life, at least we can answer the question and say, no, we are not alone. There is life elsewhere in the universe.